Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're at. It's 1:28 in the morning on January 30th, 2022, and I have insomnia. I've actually watched a little movie. I've worked on some water lines for our washing machine. I think I know how to fix it in the morning after I got away from it and thought about it. And the insomnia is hit. And I usually try to do these shows Sunday mornings sometimes, talk about rainy Sundays, and those are the perfect days to read comic books going back to when I was a kid. And then during those, I'll sit there and like complain that I couldn't sleep last night and I look like death and stuff. So I figured, can't sleep, working around the house. And while I was working around the house in silence, watching the cat freak out, get the zoomies running through the house, thoughts started pondering in my head. And I'm like, well, let's just go ahead and get them out. Topic that may interest some of you, may not. Just my thoughts, not the end of the world. So basically, it's real easy to jump on YouTube today, jump on social media today, and be real negative about comic books. And then for years on my channel right here, I've always tried to stay positive and say positive things. And there was a time for quite a while that I encouraged people, like, let's be positive. Let's find the stuff to show people that they'll really like and everything, and the good stuff. And that's not really quite right. I have a few rant videos. I've talked about a few comics that are absolute trash, but if you go through my catalog of videos, you really got to dig for those. and uh, and that's all right. But I realized, you know what? It's not balanced. Sometimes you got to call things like they are, and because this hobby for so long, for some of us, me going back to when I was 4 years old, back in 1977, growing up with them, watching comics get validated, gained a little bit of respect, watching that stigma have the stinger on it sort of get dulled down over the years. 1985, May of 1985, I believe. Um, One of my mom's friends brought a newspaper over to my house because an article on Crisis on Infinite Earth in 1985 had made it into the paper. Marv Wolfman's interviewed, Jim Shooter's interviewed, and I've held on to this forever, as you can see, and should have got it laminated long ago. And so I grew up on music, MTV, riding bikes, movies, um, wrestling, pop culture. We didn't call it hiking, but we hung out in the woods and stuff, right, with all our friends and stuff, right. And then I reached an age to where the music scene around here, and you got to understand, it's a rural community. It was real easy to find everybody back in the late 80s and stuff, before social media, basically because of how you looked and how you dressed, in the places you hung out at. Started out with like skating rinks and local bands playing everywhere and stuff. So there was like a little bit of a community, and I did play in those bands. I was a bass player, and what was really cool about it is everybody knew who played what. Everybody knew what song. And my thing was is that being a bass player, I'm left-handed and I was playing right-handed, and I was literally watching MTV videos, watching them how they played watching how they played their instruments. And then there was a music store that sold these books that were this all has to do with comics. That's what I'm getting at. They would do their they would have tablatures, right? And basically, I would read those real quick and then run home trying to remember them and learn how to play and stuff, right? So what we would do is we knew who knew how to play Paranoid by Black Sabbath on the guitar. If you got with your friends, you'd run over there. Everybody seemed to know how to play TNT by AC/DC, and my song that everybody would bring me over to sing was Enter Sandman, because what I did is I can't sing, I couldn't sing, but what I did was sort of my imitation, my parody of a gruff voice of James Hetfield, and it was not bad. Okay, so played in my first band when I was 17, and it and it was quite interesting because it was two other guys in the band. And looking back on it, I should have been a manager of a band more than anything, because even at 17, I ended up doing everything. The guy it was his band, um, so he was stuck in the early 80s. The guy still had the curly permed hair and the porn stash, and thought 38 Special was still the band, right? And then we had a guy who was definitely on the autistic spectrum, but it made him a genius at guitar. The guy would just sit and stare, had long blonde hair, real thin. And then he could play anything on guitar, virtuoso like, but he couldn't play. And sure had to watch out for him. You know, it was really strange. And I ended up being the one that brought the music into the present at the time. I threw in a little Black Crows, Twice as Shy was the first one I got them to play. I had to finesse the situation. And then I got us our first gig on the phone, because I kind of lied about my age, talking on the phone to the manager. It ended up in a bar out in rural Kentucky, and it was just like the Blues Brothers. We were behind chicken wire. Now, that the music scene is what led me into being able to sneak into bars with my friends. If we had some of our friends playing in a local bar, and these bars were not Cheers, mind you, okay, not Cheers. There was tons of them back then, and tons of local bands and stuff were playing them. The most famous one out here was a band called Tommy and the Blues Hounds. I can't Tommy Knox and the Blues Hounds, and yeah, whatever. And it was quite fantastic time in an era. That's what made it so fun. So we would sneak into these bars, and it's not as seedy as it sounds, and it was quite a different era. But the rule is that you would come in the back door and you would stand on a linoleum square. You weren't allowed on the carpet where the tables were. Then past the carpet was a dance floor, and that's where the band would be. So I was quite a bar fly from the time I was about 15 or 16, um, until probably about 2014. Quite a long time. Not as seedy as it sounds. Hung out with bartenders, and I would leave when the crowds would come in. Hang out. Got some wild stories from the 20s, and throughout all these bars, I always spotted one thing. I actually became a bartender when I was 22, for about 6 or 7 months. I could tell all kinds of stories about that, but there was always the old man that would hang out by himself. Almost every bar had one. An older man by himself, just sitting there drinking. And I was like, I want to be sure not to become that guy. So it made me fully aware that times change, we age. Sometimes you got to know when to quit, when to check out. But there was two things that have happened with comics, that we didn't expect. Right? You expect things to change, to evolve, to be different. But YouTube happened, and about the last 10 years of, especially the last 6 and stuff, I really pity the people that have come into the hobby between the last 6 and 10 years. So I've had a lot of thoughts, and I'm not the old man at the end of the bar. A majority of the comics are really bad. And there's a lot that has happened with YouTube channels and Twitter and social media that has lifted up. You know, you look like you have a nice green lawn, but it's lifted up. But when you lift up the lawn and stuff, there's a lot of decay under there and a lot of nasty little vermin and bugs and stuff there, all necessary to keep the lawn going. And that's a lot of what's happened with comics. So I had an opportunity to be a huge channel back in 2016. The video's there, it's viral, but the difference is I said what I had to say. And I referenced that video quite a bit because in 6 years, things have just gotten worse. And there's tons of videos that seems to rehash or come to the same conclusion with those videos I made. This is a year before Comicsgate and all that stuff had happened. And it blows my mind that stuff's still around and everything. So the two things I didn't expect, of course, was you just never imagined connecting with so many people that collected comics. Back when I was growing up, we would find each other and it'd be something else. You finally got to a comic book shop and it was something wild. You went to comic book conventions and you felt like you were at Disneyland. You were home. It was pretty cool. So you got to really dive into this hobby you had on the side that you didn't get to really talk to a lot of people. Then over the years, we had more and more TV shows come up, comic book movies come up. All thanks to Tim Burton. I have insomnia, sir. Collector Stuff has asked why we are up. Beginning of the video, I did a big long explanation that usually when I hit the insomnia, then I get up and try to do the show. If I have time to do it, I look like death, and I complain about my insomnia and the thoughts I had. So yeah, that's what we're doing. We just decided to stay up. So anyway, thinking about the last thing I said there. Yeah, you just cannot predict the future to where you would have access to everybody. It's become so normalized for me, people that watch this stuff and everything over the last decade and a half, whatever it's been now, to jump on here and see people talking about comics and reviewing comics and everything. It's easy to take for granted. In 2001 on comicboards.com, that's still around, and it's the message boards where you typed your responses and it'd make a thread and everything. That was the stuff. You're like, holy crap, I'm on here. And you'd have comic book pros like Walt Simonson jump on there and stuff. Really, and Kurt Busiek and a few other people would pop in every now and then. And then in 2010, I was there. I saw it. I had a Twitter. I got rid of the Twitter. Now I've got another Twitter, but I have really screened what I watch on and stuff because I think the place is toxic. But I was there when Dan Slott went after a fan. He did. And then it made comic book news on these websites. And I was like, oh man, I saw that happen live and stuff. Didn't think about making a video and stuff. But starting right there, you really started seeing a lot of negative stuff come up with comics. And then you had people like me and Bronze Star and a whole bunch of other channels. We just kept chugging along, talking about comics and the good stuff. And it was really uncomfortable back then to really talk negative. I got a video that I did. It took a year, maybe 2 years of people really asking for it, me just to slam and roast Booster Gold and ask why I hated it. It was really uncomfortable doing that, but it was very cathartic and stuff. So we get up here today, and it's really strange that all these YouTube videos that popped up back in the day, some of the first ones and the ones that follow, and they're still around. There's some still around, but they're not real big anymore. But just talking about comics we like and love and the passion and bringing everybody in and making this big community. And as the quality of the comics went down and they got worse and worse and all this bad behavior started popping up, channels got bigger as the quality of books went down. I find that ironic, tragic even, maybe. So is it up to me to adapt to the world that's here? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Because I think it's just an era and it's fleeting. There's more years of really fantastic and great comics than there have been of just this wasteland that's out there right now with a few survivors. All right. I see the good comics that are out there, like these little Mad Max characters running around just trying to survive and try to stay moral and stuff. Right. That's what it feels like, but you really have to dig and find. Even music's like that. So I didn't want to be the old man at the bar. I mean, I started really paying attention to this when I was like in my 20s. I did not want to be the old man at the bar that I saw that was like, it was time to stop hanging out at bars, man. You know what I mean? And that's where we're at with like the comics. I've really been thinking, did you just get old, Tim? Or did you get stuck in an era? Are you stuck in the past with your comics and stuff? And I'm just like, no, we really are living in an era of just really bad stuff. And it blows my mind that there are people that hang in buying the bad comics so they can roast them and chew them out and report on Twitter and things. Now I'm just laying out the ground. I'm reporting the weather. I'm not complaining about the weather. I'm not yelling for kids to get off my lawn, but there should be able to be a way to look around and talk about what's out there, like adults with somebody like getting all mad and what's the term, butt hurt, if we want to get juvenile a little bit. But what got me thinking about this are two things, man. I ended up at a library earlier in the last 2 weeks and I ended up buying this. This was originally on PBS, but I ended up getting this documentary on the history of comics. I have tons here, and then I have tons of superhero movies, if you will, that have extras on them where they're interviewing people like Frank Miller and Denny O'Neil and stuff. And Denny O'Neil, I tell you what, one of the things you've heard yelled over the years before I get there that kills me is and I paid attention to it. And like I said, I got rid of Twitter a little while. Oh, what was that guy's name? Chuck Wendig, and then Dan Slott, and then there's been these people who want to get Twitter famous. They spend more time on Twitter, it feels like, than on their job. At least that's the perception. If they were as creative with their stories in the books as they are on social media, I think we'd have some, a ton of great stuff out there. But I started hearing the entitled reader, entitled customer, toxic fan base and stuff. And they would talk about the writing and the art and things. And they would put out there, and they weren't wrong. It's just that they're doing the talk, but they're not walking the walk. There was an era where we were told, and this is around 2015 and 16, we were told it's not for you, should just move on. We were being told that we needed to get out of comics by the people making the comics, assistant editors who were like in their early 20s, were lecturing people on social media and stuff. If you've been around this for a while, you know who these people are. I don't want to make it about them per se. Okay. But we were getting told it's not for us, move on. And then there would be like, they would throw it out to, you're probably a 40-year-old guy you're probably in your 40s and 50s with long boxes and stuff. I've been told that on Facebook. And a lot of these attacks where it was like supposed to be an insult that you're well read in this stuff, that you know how the books work, and you've been in it for a long time. But the hypocrisy of all this is you would see them talking, they would be telling the entitled readers and where they can see it and everything. And a lot of this stuff was to get clicks and clout and show off for their friends. But it was like, don't write for the audience. Write for yourself. You'll be happier that way. And to a certain extent, they're right. They're right to write that. But that's not what they're doing. Okay, by choosing not to per se write, and this is their excuse. And I think it's more a lack of talent and a lack of knowledge in the field of what they're doing. After what I've read over the years and picked up and seen what they were doing, there's definitely a lack of knowledge, a lack of research, and a lack of respect for the characters that have been around forever, that they're just borrowing. They act like they own them, but they're not doing that. They are writing for an audience, and it's that SJW crowd that a majority of them do not collect the comics. You can get into the argument all you want, but the sales of comic books are nothing like they used to be. And that's a big part of the reason. I don't know why people want to split hairs on that and try to tell me that I'm hearing a zebra outside my door when I hear hooves running by, when it's actually a horse. It's that obvious. But they are writing for an audience. They're writing for that people that follows them on Twitter and stuff, right? They all kind of cling together. You've heard stuff over the years like Whisper Network and all this stuff. Man, it got X-Files there for a while and everything like that. But they're telling people, oh, we're writing for ourselves. Comic books have always been political and things like that. Hey, guys are popping in here, but it's they're doing it. Wouldn't be bringing it up if they weren't saying it where you could see it. When they're not doing it themselves, they are writing for other people, and those other people in mass are not watching these shows. They are not reading these comics, and then so you have this whole crowd of us who keep reading their comics. Back issues are flying high. The spec channels will come up where they reference old books. And it all goes back to almost, 95% of what came before, and before 10 years ago. We'll go with that. And very rarely, it's not balanced. That's another thing I'm getting at. It's not balanced. It's all these older books. I mean, as in the present, from what I've seen, thanks to a Moon Knight trailer for a show on Disney Plus, Moon Knight #3 was hot. Moon Knight #3 came out like in 81 or 82. This isn't about spec and books not holding their value and these books getting inflated because of a reactionary market that's not wanting to miss out, and things like that. But it always goes back to the older stuff. It still goes back to the older stuff. Back issue markets are on fire. I've watched videos where they've talked about their local comic book shop. Uh, some of them just have back issues. They invest in it. Um, Even on my Facebook page, on my Facebook, I can't get away from it. I'm part of a local yard sale page. It's privatized. And there's still this local place that's a thorn in my side, where he's putting out, I will buy collections, big or small, and stuff like that. So there's people out there putting a lot of energy getting the back issues, and that's fine. But that just kind of goes to show that the people who talk about things being fantastic right now, it's all talk. They very rarely can bring up their work to back up what they're saying. It doesn't hold water. You know what I mean? It's like, but they are saying it is, right. And you can't get away from it. You really can't get away from it. Especially online. I mean, I deactivated Facebook. I got rid of my Twitter. I did all sorts of things, and you can't get away from it. So is that part of adapting more to the so many sources of information? That's part of the adapting, I would say. The other thing that I don't understand, and I guess it's great if you're in it for views and clicks and stuff. Of course, we're on YouTube. Everybody wants to get some views. Everybody wants people watching and stuff. But if that's the sole purpose of what you're doing, you're going to burn out real fast and get disappointed real fast. And I could just hardly imagine. Like I said, a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to be a huge channel, and I was like, I just don't have time for that. I don't have time to constantly be trying to find these topics that get people to pop in here and get repetitive and stuff. And that was my choice. But I don't understand constantly reading bad books and reviewing them and talking about them. Following people on Twitter that you don't like and they come off horribly, just so you can have a YouTube channel and keep it going. Now, I'm assuming they're making money with advertisements and stuff, so that's a big factor, And who knows? Who knows? It's not for me to say that it's right or wrong, but it's not something I want to adapt to. You know what I mean? If I want to get big and keep going on YouTube, I'd have to start being really negative all the time, reporting on negative stuff, and then I would group around with people who did the same thing, and then we would all blast. Who's the bully? Who turns into the bully? You know what I mean? It just you pick a side. And the biggest thing about it is that it's kind of funny saying this, because part of the stigma of comics for years was they're for kids, and part of the stigma of comics before that even, and it survived long, and I'm sure there's people out there that believe that, is that this stuff will rot your brain. Okay. Well, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like something that comics rose above with people like Frank Miller and Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore and Mike Grell. You know the names. You know the names, going all the way back to Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, and Roy Thomas, and things like that. And things were growing up, but it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like these people socialize and fight and name call and try to shut each other down and throw out the R word. R ends with acist and things like that to shut other people down and stuff. And then I've heard other terms and categories and the way they talk with people. And am I the old man at the bar? Because to me, it sounds like middle school. And I'm one of those guys. I did not like school solely because of stuff like that. It's middle school socialization. It's grown adults getting on Twitter. And I apologize if there's anybody out there that spends a lot of time on Twitter, but I'm just talking about what I saw before I got off. And it's like middle school. I'm a grown man. I read comics. I draw. I kayak. I hike. I've met other people who are professionals. I feel like I've seen every walk of life. Probably since the early 90s, of people who read comic books, business owners, doctors, lawyers. Then some of them are on my Facebook, every walk of life doing this stuff. And they don't act like that. They never acted like that. The worst you would get is I would talk about Bone. I'm like, oh man, the Scholastic Bone books came out. they're in color now. And my lawyer acquaintance who is in the comics and stuff was like, oh yeah, I ordered the hardback of those in the original black and white. You know what I mean? Like that was as bad as it got. Somebody was like, I spent a little bit more money and got the good stuff. Years later, they're behind me here somewhere. I ended up getting three of the hardbacks, the first ones that he bought. I think for like $1.50 a piece on eBay. I think I paid $3.50 to $5 for them. You know what I mean? So that's part of the hobby, the hunt and the things like that, and always being in the background. And that really is as long as it got. A lot of people, a majority of the people, and when I say majority, I really want to say 99.9% of the people that I would run across when it comes to comics, there's something about the comic book collector that is special. I don't know if it's the comics affecting us or we're a personality type that's drawn to the comics because comics found me. YouTube found me. You know what I mean? Like the comics were all over my house. If you have a TV set in your house, think all the way back to you remember a time there wasn't a comic book or it wasn't a television. Was there a time that you did not have a television in your house? Think back as a kid. Did you not have a radio? Did you have a coffee table? Did you have a refrigerator? That's how comics were in my house because the stepdad and the uncle had already been collecting them since the 60s and they were there as I was growing up. Same thing. That's exactly how it was, right? So when it came to YouTube, I started out living in a place where I was going to have to put my comic book boxes in a walk-in closet and I didn't want to dig them out all the time. So I started making videos where I'm like, this is box number 1. I would label the box and make the video. Little did I know there was people out there looking for comic book videos. That's how it went down. So a majority of the people, like I said, I always found friendly as can be. Every now and then you would get that guy that you kind of pitied. We all know who they are. Little bit of body odor and really into the comics and was that stereotype that you would hear about that probably lived in their mother's basements and stuff. As I got older and got into the field of work I'm in and stuff, there are mental health issues with those people. Okay. There are signs there. And thank God that they have comic books and pop culture and superheroes and this whole thing to bring them joy and to get them out and socialize and see people. It's a positive. A lot of stuff that I've seen over the years about comics were the positives. That escapism was there. Then as you grew up, the magic of comics is that there's variety. The variety is still there, but nothing like it was back in the day. Nothing like it. I think the 90s probably had the most variety ever simply because there were at one point, if you bought every comic book that was being published at the time, there was a time where there was 800 comics a month coming out, not counting trades, not counting magazines like Wizard or anything like that, actual comics that were coming out. So the variety was there. You go all the and then another thing that people have all we know who is it, Kelly Sue DeConnick. We've all seen the her mocking the fans and trying to make her point, saying that what do you mean there's no politics in comics? What comics were you reading or whatever that squill was she was doing and stuff, right? And stuff like that. And she's not wrong. There's always been a form of politics there, but they didn't lecture. You know what I mean? You go all the way back to Denny O'Neil with Wonder Woman, of all things, trying to stab some feminism in there with Wonder Woman by taking her powers away. And then what happens? He meets Gloria Steinman on some television show where they're getting interviewed, and Gloria Steinman turned around and said, so you wanted to bring more girls to comics by taking the powerful woman and stripping her of her power. The magic here is that Denny O'Neil said she was right. Okay. He wasn't out to be right. You know what I mean? He really thought he was doing something good. And when somebody explained it to them, he was able to back up, apologize, and fix and say he's be right. You don't get to do that now. That's what I've noticed. You don't get to do that now. Adults can do that. Children can't. Okay. The danger of this is talking about this stuff in broad strokes with a brush. You don't want to paint all kids the same, all adults the same, and all people on that side the same. People have different political beliefs. That's what makes part of this country great, because you're allowed to do that. But when you read some of these comics and see that they're catering to one side, that's a problem. You take away the variety, you take away the discussion, you take away a lot of your audience, and they brag about it now. They've been doing it. I'm right. So another thing about documentaries like this, and I really don't know if this is the one. I mean, there's a ton here, that I've watched over the years. But Denny O'Neil, now that I'm bringing him up, Denny O'Neil really said that he had an epiphany about comics. He got in there and he was working on them, and I kind of think he said something about he thought he was just doing comics. And the longer he was into it, and the more fans he ended up meeting, the more people he would talk to when they found out what he did or whatever, is all of a sudden he realized that there was a certain responsibility to it. I don't know who came. I want to assume that maybe it was Stanley that came up with it, but with great power comes great responsibility. And he was absolutely right, because Denny O'Neil had the epiphany where he realized that these weren't just comics. This was modern mythology, and they had a duty to respect it. It was something that he really, he didn't, I'm going to interpret what I think he meant. Okay. I'm going to interpret what I think he meant by that. But they realized that these characters are going to outlive them, the people who are working on them in the present. This is like early 70s that he realized this. They're going to outlive them. They're borrowed. They sort of belong to everybody that reads them. So if you're going to write a Batman story, it's got to be the character of Batman. All right. If you're going to write a Captain America story, it's got to be there's certain elements of a Captain America story. And I think they learned that lesson in the 90s with Spider-Man, when they thought when they were sort of like, we can just put Spider-Man on any book and it'll sell. We don't have to worry about it being that good. Whatever. Just put Spider-Man on, it'll sell. And if you go back a little bit before that, I got a She-Hulk comic book I can show you where you got the Punisher and Wolverine on the cover, and he's like, they're not in this book. We just put them on the cover to help sales, and it was a joke. So you had the Punisher pop up, put Wolverine in a book, put Spider on the book. They thought it just sold. Next thing you know, they're just filing for Chapter 11 in the late 90s. Wonder why. Before that, before that Chapter 11, they were farming their books out to 2 studios at Image Comics. Before that, they they bought up the Ultraverse, and they sued Defiant Comics, and they lost the case. But Defiant Comics used up all the resources in the court case. Shut down. Well, so yeah, a lot of the dirty business has always been there, but nothing like today where it's attention seeking. And it's like they like the attention. It's like it gives them clout to say that they look what I said to the fan. Look at this. And then all of a sudden they're like, how dare people make YouTube videos of me? Do you see what they're doing here? And then all of a sudden some of them fade away. Okay. So they fade away. They do. There's a lot of people I kind of do challenge. I think there's like maybe 2 or 3 writers that are still in comics that may be borderline superstars, but their good stuff usually ends up owned by them over at Image or something or whatever, right? Immortal Hulk seems to be the exception to the rule. That is the only book that people have not only consistently been excited about, but it actually picked up fans. It's got a good back issue value. People are still seeking it out, and they've already started a new Hulk series after the Immortal Hulk stopped at issue 50, and there's people missing it. Okay. One of the newest characters that have come out that I really have seen people be passionate about, because they don't call him Spider-Man, they call him Miles. They talk about him like it's a person. They call him by his first name. Well, the problem now with that is that you have to remember that for characters to become happy accidents, for characters to grab an audience and have people grow up with them, is you got to have a little bit of creativity and a little bit of freedom, and letting people experiment and picking up from the fans that they're starting to like this character. You have to understand Wolverine, Deadpool, Punisher, all accidents. Nobody knew that they were going to grow in popularity. If I put this in movie terms, Mar George Lucas doesn't understand why Boba Fett became so freaking popular. He just couldn't get it. Okay. And this is a guy that went back and messed with his movies in the 90s, that, that he created in the 70s and early 80s. Um, but he gave us Django Fett out of that. Even a guy who didn't get it was like, all right. So a little bit of fan service is good as long as the story progresses and stuff, right? So being the old man at the bar, wonder if I'm adapting as I get older. Do I need to adapt to this environment? I've never really been a conformist. I've been looking for that word forever. I'm not some radical. I'm not some guy that went out and protested, but like I call it like I see it on a lot of things, right? I can't stand an activist. An activist makes it about them. They don't get their hands dirty. They don't get in the trenches. They don't have a face. They act like they're doing these great things, and people fall for it. Like they're out there just leading a cause and stuff, but they don't really do anything at all. Um, they don't work in a soup kitchen. They don't volunteer at hospitals. They don't go to school and get a bachelor's of social work, a master's of social work. They don't go out and do anything. Real change comes from inside, not outside. But people have the right to protest in this country, and even if it makes them act like idiots. Okay, you know what I mean? There's been a handful of people who have made history where they really changed things. And I think that's what a lot of people want to be. They want to make the history and be one of those people who really made change. Um, it's been a long time since that happened. Let's see who's out here, man. And I'll get back to my rant here because I'm still not sleepy. We're now at 2:05 in the morning. Wow. Man, okay. Collectors of stuff is here. How you doing? Go back. Yeah. Sequential Geek. Zaddy is here. Old man at a bar. Sounds like something I can relate to. Yeah, I'm about to get back on that topic again and stuff, right? Yes, we know you're not a nerd or a geek. Except the hunt, for me at least, has become the grueling, tedious process of scanning on a lot of ads and their images, lack of thereof, not the hunt. Too much BS. Haven't seen you around in a while there, geek. Comics Unlimited 79 is here. What's up? Good to see you. Okay. But the old man at the bar thing, right? So for people that's jumping in, I want to cover it real quick there and stuff like that. I went to bars from 16 up until about, God, I don't know how old I was, 44, 43. A little bit of a barfly, shooting pool and stuff. And I've been to all kinds of bars. Some were Cheers, some were like Legends in Baltimore. Some I just had pool tables and things like that. And I always noticed the old man that would sit by himself at the bar. Now, what's wild is that those guys were probably, I'm pretty close to the age they probably were back then, but they look 70, 65 and 70, what we have now. And even now, I work with a guy who is 62, and the guy could pass for my age and stuff, right? So something's happening, you know, over the few years where, people age a lot easier than they did. And stuff. And I'm always trying to be aware of not to be that guy, know when to quit going to the bar. And it actually happened out of the blue because I walked into a place. It's connected to a bowling alley. They have a pool table in there, and I showed up one night to shoot pool. And when I walked in, you could hear it's like in my head, I heard a record scratch because everybody was looking at me and got quiet. I'm like, man, did somebody's dad walk in or something? And I was joking when I said it, and I turned around and looked, and I realized everybody was looking at me, and I was getting called sir. And I decided to leave. I was like, it's happened, like it's happened. And as I was leaving, a guy held the door open. It was like, you have a good night, sir. And when I shut the door, it's like the party started again. I mean, I was like, oh my God, it's time to quit. And I don't think that's what's going on with the comics. That's the theme tonight is, am I the old man at the bar that should know when to quit? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't get, if I ever quit, it'll be on my terms. It's not going to be because some people that are assistant editors at a company have decided to tell me they're not for you anymore. They're not for you. We're not writing that for you. I'm not going to have someone who is claiming that they're not writing for an audience. They're writing for themselves because they're artists and writers when they really are writing for an audience that doesn't buy this stuff. And the proof, and then I'm also having concerns of like, am I going to outlive the big two? And I'm being dead serious. For decades, going back to like the 40s and 50s and stuff. In this very documentary, you had was it this documentary? I think it was a wait a minute, no. It was a podcast I was listening to about Jack Kirby and Rick Vetch was on it. Rick Vetch, of course, is 71 and stuff. And they were talking about how they read articles and I don't know, read articles or maybe Vetch had heard other veterans of the comic book industry talk about how, like, even going back to the 40s, you just every day you went in wondering if the comic book uh, business is going to collapse. You just, you went in with that feeling every day, and they were calling it, and things were going, it's going to collapse any day. So there's always been this feeling of a Ragnarok coming to comics, apparently in the industry, going way back to the 40s. And then you had like little scares, like I mentioned with Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics, Jim Shooter said that if Marvel Comics had not got some of the license that they did back in the 70s for those license book, there'd be no Marvel today. You had to Chapter 11. That was going to protect them from bankruptcy. That was a big scare for Marvel disappearing. And so it's always been there. There's always been these things that's going on. But this is the first time that I've seen books be so... You can't have a handful of books carry a whole company and keep a whole audience coming to you. Can anybody actually remember a comic they bought like, a year ago? I mean, really off the top of your head, can anybody talk about a storyline that influenced a bunch of other books and stuff, like Dark Phoenix Saga? It's not about living in the past. It's about the quality of stories in the books and the creativity and the rejuvenation and the new things and things that keep going. And now it's not there. I mean, I read when I was reading some Marvel books over the last 6 years or so, I never really had to buy them because I could read them in 3 minutes. And they actually had pages that if you ripped the page out of the book, it didn't affect the story at all. It was inserting those SJW things. And since I've mentioned SJW twice in this stuff, which I can't believe is still a term, considering we're in a whole new decade, to me it sounds like something from 2016 and 17. Sounds very dated. I could give a shit about SJWs. I could give a shit about anti-SJW bullshit. Enough is enough for me. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's other things to talk about. There's other things out there. Let's move forward. Let's get great. Oh, yeah, this is awesome. Jack fought in World War II. Yes, he did. I love the interview that I saw where he got asked about World War II, and he said they gave me a rifle and a candy bar and said, go kill Hitler. So I gave it a shot. He went and tried and stuff like that. Rick was a hippie. Edwards are all over this stuff, right? Rick was a hippie. Right. Gotcha, man. Now, as far as the, y'all want to talk a little bit about bars, man. We can do that. I can pick back up. He's saying he thinks he's aged out going to bars. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there was a lonely old man that goes to bars and he didn't really socialize. You had to see him. He was there, old and lonely, out of touch. Music that he could tell he just wasn't having a good time. It's just he had nothing else to do because he was used to going to bars all the time. It's time to hang it up, get some friends and go to bars. So yeah, we go out to our brewery every now and then. I've been to like maybe 2 or 3 bars over the years. I've been to restaurants that had bars in them. It's just not the bar hopping, bar fly, going out and socializing and acting like the young men who are on the hunt. So it's not about going out and having a bunch of friends you're able to get wild with every Saturday night. I'm not 23 years old and it's the 15th of the month and I'm like, okay, I got enough money to pay the electric bill, or we all can go to Good Time Charlie's tonight, and Good Time Charlie's would win. You couldn't just decide to go to a bar on a Tuesday night, for the hell of it, and have a good time because next day's a work day. So anyway, at a lot of these topics to get on YouTube and stuff, when you get thinking about it, when you've been in the hobby this long, a lot of this stuff can get heavy if you don't watch. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of forget you got a ton of comics. There's places you can go get comics. The Hunt's there. You can go around. And thanks to like the overwhelming, don't if you don't take steps, if you don't think ahead a little bit, it's overwhelming all the information that can come for you as you accumulate YouTube time, accumulate YouTube channels, and what if you spend a lot of time on social media, you kind of get into this little bubble where you're really immersed in it, whether you know or not. And then when you get away for a little while and stuff, you're like, big deal, big deal. These people over here arguing like idiots. This guy's over here acting like an idiot. They're writing awful stuff over here. Oh, this is pretty good. This guy's writing something interesting. That's good. I wonder when people are going to notice it. You kind of you step out of it, and it's not that heavy. It's not that big a deal. It's just that there's an overwhelming amount of stuff that can hit you in the face, and you feel like that's the only thing that's going on. And there's a certain area of maturity there where you kind of got to block that out, right? If I use the bar metaphor here, sort of like when you're sitting at a table with your friends and they got the music really loud, you finally really do reach a point to where you blocked out all the people talking, the chatter going around, all the stimulation that's going on, and you're focused on your friends, and y'all are having a little talk and stuff, socializing, probably gossiping or talking about some girl looks like she could have a tail. You just never know. Weird stuff would be brought up. But so there's still a lot of great things in there, but the balance is kind of gone. And I feel like that's with the product coming out, because unfortunately, when it comes to talking about comics, one of the trappings is that you still are reactionary with the last thing you read, or the next thing you're looking forward to, or the thing you bought right now. And other things. The magic of that is that somebody probably read this in 1967 or whenever it came out. I read it in the late 70s. And then if somebody read it today, all three of us, even though it's in separate decades, spread out over 50 years, would have the same experience reading it. And now we're going to react to it. And that's the same thing with YouTube. It's kind of a little difficult to get all juiced up to come on here and talk about comics and stuff when there's so much overwhelming negative stuff. Now, one of the things that I think people just need to be aware of, and I don't think it's a big secret. I don't think it's an epiphany. I don't think I've freaking unlocked, a safe here, but both sides have to keep things going. In order for people to have content to put on YouTube regularly like they want to, they've got to keep it going with the other side. Okay. Think of it as like wrestling. I'm not saying it's as fake as wrestling, but it's definitely a symbiotic relationship there, to where if I want to have content, I got to stir the pot over here and get these idiots rolling. And so I can talk about Twitter. Put a hot take on there. I want to respond to this guy's hot take. Okay, nobody's really, they've closed ranks. They're not talking all this shit on Twitter anymore. So let's see who's dumb enough to say something. Oh, this person is. They go looking for it, or they poke the bear and stuff, right? So a lot of it is manufactured, and it's fake drama, and they're not as passionate about it as you think. And then you come to find out that if you put it together, like I said, it's not some big conspiracy. They're selling a product, and they're keeping people interested. It's a business plan. They've got a book for you to sell. And I'm not going to lie, man, if I was going to make $1 million, I'd really have to do a gut check to wonder if I would do the same thing. Who knows? Wow, people are popping in here. Sequential Geek is giving y'all some recommendations there about Joe Rogan and something going on with, I don't know, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's an interesting era that we're in. So I've been collecting comics for a long damn time. There's other people I know that's been collecting comics for a long damn time. There's other people that I know have been collecting comics maybe for 10 years, and I pity them and stuff like that. But the point of saying all that isn't for validation or bragging rights or anything like that. It's that I feel like there's always going to be people who are going to always be collecting comic books, right? Going back to what Sequential Geek was sort of trying to say, thinking I aged out of a bar, I'm actually getting to my point. You kind of beat me to it. It's you got to change the bar. You know what I mean? What are you looking for? What do you have to say? What do you want to read? What are you looking for? Because it's all out there. Uh, the strength of a great comic book collection is the variety you have in it. And up until probably at least 6 years ago, if I had, I could probably do the math and really come up with a actual date. I think it kind of died, but there's a variety of stuff out there to get, and it's accessible and it's there. So if you really love the hobby and you really love reading comics, there's plenty to go back and look at. And I've been watching people discover that. Uh, so that's why I'm sort of lost of like, I don't think I need to adapt today's comic book market by just doing negative stuff and roasting comics and getting on here, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. It's overwhelming. I've seen people give in. I've seen people give in and disappear. I've seen people disappear because they didn't want to give in. Um, it's all about, if you could have seen my YouTube feed over the last year or two, with all this stuff, people have walked away. And then you got those people that I'm so glad I'm friends with because they could give a shit about any of this. And, the pandemic has slowed us down a bit, but it was all about these little conventions that were popping up and going to, and it was all about the comics and hanging out and finding a good place to go eat, getting this damn good cheeseburger over here, or getting this, getting that. Let's go back, check out what I bought. Hey, brother, you need $10? You can pay me back now, man, because we're walking out and we see things and stuff. So everything is still there. You just can't let yourself get swamped with all the negativity that's out there, man. There's always going to be negativity and assholes, but it's what you make of it. I think it's my whole point. And I feel pretty confident saying that. So yeah, I want to make sure I'm not the old man at the end of the bar by myself, but there's other places to go. There's other places to go, and there's other people to invite. You know what I mean? I don't have to stop going to the bar. I can go out and just shoot some pool, maybe drink one beer the whole night. You know what I mean? Oh wow, look at this, man. They've got a tribute band over here of a band I used to love. It's there. There's some retro stuff, right? Oh my gosh, I know these guys in the band over here. That's kind of cool. So yeah, I want to say it again. If I ever decide to quit comics, it will be on my terms. If I decide to get rid of this stuff, it's going to be on my terms. It's not going to be because some entitled people who have let it go to their heads that they got a job that they're not very good at, and from what I understand, pays poorly. Want to lecture me or somebody my age that these aren't for you. So I got something to tell you. My money, it's not for you either. So, touche. You know. But what got me thinking about this is that this is a book by Philip Jose Farmer called More Than Fire. I have the dust cover off. And what's amazing about this is that there's a character named Kikaha, and this book is set in several different universes. You have this race of people called lords, and they make universes and hang out in them. And there's like little wars between people trying to take over their universe. Then you have Kikaha, who's this dude from I think his name's Cornelius, from 1920s, and he ended up finding a gateway into the world of tears, and he's kind of immortal, and he's your pulp action hero running through there. He's the trickster. He has all kinds of names and stuff. And the bad guy's name is Red Orc. And this is the final showdown. People who followed this book, the first book came out like in 68. The last book came out like in, I don't know what it was, 80, I don't know, 79, 80. And people had to wait till 1993 for this. The point is the audience was still there. People still bought the book. And then people like me read the books after they'd come out. I read them when I was like about 15, I think. Series of books, 5. This is the 6th book, I think. 4th, I don't know, 5th or 6th book. But the whole point is that here I am reading this, a book from 1993, and I have devoured it. Read about, I don't know, 65 pages in one setting today. And the same thing is with comics. Okay, that's, you know what I mean? I mean, you can raise your hand if you're one of those guys that were there in probably the 80s when like it took forever for the last issue of Camelot 3000 to come out, when it took forever for the last issue of Watchmen to come out, when it took forever for the last issue of Dark Knight Returns to come out. And then we get to the 90s where it was like, if it was an Image comic, you were waiting forever for it to come out. the next issue and stuff, getting off all that stuff, right? So, yeah, apparently in any hobby you have, the audience sticks around because they love and they're passionate with these characters. A big problem with why the books suck is an amazing thing as a comic book reader you may not realize that you have is able to, how can I say this? You are able to read a book that comes out monthly, or maybe you're able to read a trade and wait for the next trade, and you're able to keep characters and storylines in your head straight with the information that's given you. That's quite an accomplishment. You understand what you're reading, you know how to read it, and you retain the information, and you get a continuity in your head. You're able to put together a little puzzle with other books in your head. That's part of the charm of this. So give yourself a hand if you've read comic books for a long time and you do that. And what this does is this gives you a bit of a bullshit detector. You don't even realize it, right? Because it's a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of intelligence. You read as a hobby, you appreciate art as a hobby, you like action, and you don't even realize all of this. And all of that is individualized with what you like more and what you get out of it and stuff. All right. I'm just leading you to that path to think about it. You know, what do you like about comics? What are you able to do? And give yourself a little pat on the back, you know, for having a little culture, you know. So, but and it gives you a little bit of a bullshit detector, right? Unfortunately, it can backfire on people because you'll meet these people who haven't read books for a while, and you automatically can tell that they don't know what they're talking about. And it's really sad when you run into those people in real life. It's sad when you run into these people who are trying to get started in comics and it gets them discouraged because they're trying to validate themselves or come off bigger or get social status, or they're just fucking psychotic. But it's pretty bad when you're reading comics and you're looking at comic books and you're reading comics and you can tell that the book you just bought is written by somebody who has no fucking idea what they're doing. And that's a waste of money. And that's what burns me. That's what burns me is when I waste the money and somebody's bullshitting me. This person has been working in Hollywood and has done TV shows. This person is a Pulitzer Prize winning novelist. This person has won this award for writing and stuff. And then you pick up their comic book and you're like, what the fuck is this? You know, I'm like, sorry for the cursing. Whoever jumped out when I cursed, I'm sorry. But that's how I feel. So yeah, that's one of the things that validates me is bringing in these people, and they're being brought in for all the wrong reasons. It's a publicity stunt, it's marketing, um, and who knows what and again, I hate to say it, the SJW crap is of why they bring these people in. Whatever. I don't care. It is a factor, and I'm just bringing it up to like get a clear picture, not act like I got my head in the sand or anything. But there's enough channels and enough videos over the last 5-6 years where there's plenty of rants about that stuff, and I don't agree with all of them. I don't agree with the intensity of all of them, and I don't appreciate people really acting like they lose their mind to get hits and for it's a performance. You know, you take a serious subject, you take something that really needs to be talked about, and you turn it into a performance piece. Turn yourself into a character, and you don't even mean to do it. We block this bot. But one of the things I think we all kind of miss for us that were around there is, you know, the creative team. You know, and what got me thinking about this is that there's this fantastic show on Showtime that I watched. We watched weekly here. First season had 10 seasons and 10 episodes, and it's going to be 5 seasons. But it's called Yellow Jackets. And one of the actresses on it did this thing where she said she's real picky. It got Juliette Lewis, Christy Ricci. I can't think of the girl's name, but she was Rose on 2.5 Men. And she was the one, but she's very picky on her projects and what she gets. And one of the interviews I sort of watched because I dug the show. I think Yellow Jackets is the best television show to come out in 5 or 6 years. But anyway, she came out, and to get the job, they wanted her, and she's real picky on her projects, and she had them lay out, where are you going with my character? And she got them to tell them the 5-year plan for the entire show with her character. And she accepted it. Now, what does that got to do with comics, Tim? What are you trying to get at? What are we missing here? We miss the creative teams that stuck around. Okay. Do you realize how lucky we are that we had 17 years of Chris Claremont, and I wasn't even an X-Men fan until the Asgardian Wars. You know what I mean? That's what brought me in. Um, 17 years with Chris Claremont. Then you break that down, and you had the John Byrne era, two Dave Cockrum eras, the Paul Smith era, the John Romita Jr. era, the Jim Lee era, the Mark Silvestri era. And if you notice, after that, after the second Jim Lee era, or maybe combine the two, however you want to do it, that's when things went all to shit. Because after he left, 17 years of what he built got dissected, gut rotted, and tossed to the side after like 2 or 3. And what do? They have to create a crossover event where they do an alternate timeline called Age of Apocalypse. You know, um, and then you had Kurt Swan, 30 years on Superman in some way, shape, or form. Jack Kirby, Stan Lee on Fantastic Four, Cerebus, Dave Sim, and Gerard. Little things you don't really think about. And the closest thing we have now is Eric Larson on Savage Dragon. Todd McFarlane tries to kind of worm his way in there, acting like he had something to do with all 300 and some issues of Spawn. Whatever. He was able to get people excited about Spawn and got me to buy 2 books of Spawn last year after 30 years. And that's a feat and accomplishment in my eyes and stuff, right? But there was a consistency. There was a thing where you knew you needed to go to the spinner rack next month. Every Wednesday is when the comic books came out at the spinner rack. Some people were lucky enough to have a comic book shop where they got a pull list. I didn't get to experience that until the 90s and stuff like that. And the consistency wasn't there. It was there, right? And if John Byrne would stick around for the books, writing and drawing what he did, his great run on Fantastic Four. He started a run on She-Hulk, came back and finished it. Those books, 3-4 of those books. One of the books is amazing because it's worth like $225 because everybody thinks She-Hulk is jump roping naked in it, and she's not. That's funny. Late night hour, yeah. I want to feel this in the morning there, sleepy reader. Yeah. But that's one of the things I do miss is that consistency, a good creative team that sticks around and does a book. That's how I think how you get consistency builds trust and validation, I think. You build a readership. Your readers understand the style of what you're doing. They know what to expect from you the longer they're with you. And that's what gets them coming back. This is why people still talk about runs. It's really hard to find as many books in the last 3 years as you can throughout the 80s. I hate to say 80s because, I'm trying to make my point of like it's not just in the past, but of finding people who have stuck around on books and did anything good. Like I said, the last one I can think of is Immortal Hulk with Bennett and Coates. Was it Coates or Cates? I don't know. But the creative team staying on books was, to me, a big thing that helped sell the books. And then once you had a creative team or a creative person do their take on the book and finish their story with a middle, beginning, and end, and leaving something better than they found it for the next person. Sometimes that helped the book. Sometimes that hurt the book. It helped Daredevil, even though people were trapped in sort of trying to keep that atmosphere that Frank Miller had put on it. They move on to another book, and that book jumps up. John Byrne was a big one. You had his burn victims, where if any book that he went to, it automatically boosted sales by like 25,000. So he had 25,000. I'm pretty sure it's 25,000. Feel free to correct me. It's the middle of the night. But anywhere that Byrne went, instant sales on a book, 25,000. Even if he did a cover, the sales would go up. But they built a fan base, and it was through consistency and work and dedication. Even if they said something stupid in an interview, they had some work to back it up. You know what I mean? Not by any means am I going to compare these guys to Pablo Picasso. And it's weird the things that I retain and stuff as I'm sitting here talking and stuff. But Pablo Picasso was apparently a pretty big asshole in real life, whatever. But people were still like, it's Pablo Picasso. You know what I mean? He had fans, And he would get by with all kinds of stuff. He'd go to an expensive restaurant. Instead of paying for it, he would lightly sketch out something for them. And if somebody started demanding he do a little bit more for a sketch, he would be like, I'm just trying to pay for a meal. I'm not trying to buy the whole restaurant. And I thought that was genius. I really hope that really happened, because they knew their worth. And that's the difference. You had between older creators, more seasoned creators, and a lot of what I see today with how people act on Twitter and stuff, right? You had Pablo Picasso that knew his worth, and he knew the worth. He was knowledgeable enough to know exactly what he needed to do. What's this meal worth? I can translate that into what this work is worth, right? And there's a lot of delusions of grandeur where people seem to think that they are an artist. They're Barton Fink. If you want to go watch that movie, they're Barton Fink instead of Pablo Picasso. Um, they kind of knew their worth. Frank Miller spent a lot of time doing Ronin after he left Marvel after doing Daredevil. He spent more time on it because it was a more personal project. He knew that he was building his reputation. This was his creation. It was a reflection of what he could do. It was going to last. And that led to Sin City, Batman, Dark Knight Returns, all kinds of things and stuff, right? With him showing what he could do and be creative. Thank goodness that they had Jeanette Kahn at DC Comics, who came in, scared the hell out of the DC offices because they were working for a woman. And she approached everything from two ways: that these are artists, and the trick with comics is to be creative, and they got to have some freedom to do this and to recognize talent. But she wasn't so stuck in being the artist that she couldn't, she still ran a company and it grew. Um, Very influential person, right? It was all through merit, being creative with people, collaborating, and kind of let knowing when to stay out of things and knowing when to step up. She had she surrounded herself with great people at the same time. But you have people like Frank Miller who knew his worth as he got older and stuff, as he went through there. His ego has come and gone. His talent has waned and fell down, but he's still a name. He's come really close to being a household name, which blew my mind just because of Sin City, Frank Miller's Sin City movie, the movie. What I'm getting at. And then you have people like John Byrne and things, right? John Byrne, like I said, had his following. He built it up. He was a workhorse, and the guy's drawing X-Men comics on his website for free. uh, Refused to sell them, refused to make a deal with Marvel to have them do his Elsewind series, right? So this guy just loves what he's doing, and he still has fans that go to Burn Robotics, and he's still doing comics to the point for free. He built himself up, did Superman, obviously made a fortune, did Next Man. The guy's been all over the place. Again, talent has come and gone. Wayne, he's wrote some brilliant stuff, he's wrote some awful stuff and everything like that, but he's kept working. And then there's that famous story with Mike Golden for a fan where he commissioned him to do a Doctor Strange piece, if you will. And I think he paid $800 for it. And a year went by and he was still asking for it. And Mike Golden ended up drawing like a silhouette of Doctor Strange, giving him a raspberry, sent it to him. John Byrne found out about it on his Burn Robotics from his fans. I think the person who actually got the piece from him there got it. Byrne said, I'm going to give you a piece that's worth $800. So my whole point is that Byrne knows a sketch, that you do at a convention when he would do them and his signature and stuff. And then he knew what an $800 piece would be. They knew their worth. They knew their value. They knew the work they could put out. They could walk the walk. And then on the side, they were like, had their moments where they were complete assholes like Pablo Picasso and stuff, right? But they could back it up with work. Now you have a lot of people getting on Twitter on the creative side for clout, showing off for their friends, just being awful and stuff. And they don't have, and it's the other way around. They're doing some of this to make up for the lack of, I hate to say talent, or something like that, but they're making up for a lot of things. They have a delusions of grandeur of their value. They are not these guys that work their butts off for, some of them, half a decade now. I mean, seriously, they're not Neil Adams. They're not these big names. Neil Adams charges huge amount of money for signatures and stuff because he knows people can put it on eBay and it'll go for big money and stuff. It can be an investment for some people. Unfortunately, those of us who keep our comics and keep our signed comics and everything, we pay the price for that. It's a thing. But that's a huge difference, man. There was the creators were different, and now it's like they try to make sure, since the Image walkout back in '92, they really have not let a lot of people become superstars, if you will. Okay, you know what I mean? I think one of the last ones to really come out of that is like Neil Gaiman. Now, you've had hot artists come and go, and you had a guy who was a hot writer for a flash of the pan, but the only one that really got under my skin was where people were trying to act like Tom King was going to be the next Alan Moore. Automatically, if you have to take your talent today and describe them by past talent, there's a problem there. If they're a great writer, you say this guy's a great writer. You don't try to bring in people by saying this guy's going to be the next Alan Moore. And I'm so glad that went away. Okay, I'm so glad that lasted a hot 5 seconds and went away. And it was because of his Vision maxi series or mini series where he started getting compared to Alan Moore. I've never read that Vision mini series. I read enough Tom King to know that that's not my bar to go to. Okay, okay, it's not my bar to go to, and I can go on and why. Yeah. Jeanette Kahn and Karen Berger. Oh man, Karen Berger. Man. I just got overwhelmed with everything that she did and everything she accomplished, and now it's gone like it never happened unless you buy the reprints and stuff. And it's amazing to me how many ways you can buy the Sandman series. I can grab quite a few around here. Oh. Thanks to Jeanette Kahn and Karen Berger, even though it was Neil Gaiman doing the writing and several artists that came in and made this amazing masterpiece. But they even found a way to do absolute editions, trades, and annotated books. So of the series, there's 4 of these that you can get the complete Sandman series in black and white with annotations. And that stuff is so good. By letting these people be creative and doing what they're doing, that you will keep buying them. Isn't it amazing that there's people rebuying older comic books, older trades, catching up and things, not to recapture their childhood like that generation of the 60s and 70s did when they went off to war because they got drafted by the military for Vietnam. They come home when their moms had thrown out their comic books and they're trying to get them back to recapture their childhood. But we buy these things because they're good and they're interesting, and we find out more about what's behind the story. They have some kind of new hook, a new recoloring. I mean, good God, they're finally coming out with the is it graffiti or graphics or somebody, but they're coming out with the Sandman Overture miniseries in an oversized edition. I watched the video where Neil Gaiman got his for free, and it's just the pure art of it. In it, and there's no letters or words or captions or word bubbles or anything. It's the pure art. They're only making 2,000 of them, and people have been demanding it for 3 years, and they're only making 2,000 of them. It just amazes me with that. So anyway, I think I made my point and stuff. I think I had something to say for a change. I do think a lot of like what I do on YouTube is what do I really want to say? What I want to do? But I think I had my say. I think I've gotten this off my mind, and it is now 2:42 in the a.m. I think I've talked enough to where I'm ready to go to bed. So I appreciate everybody that's popped in here. Yep. A lot of current indies have the consistent creations, but 2 not so much. Yep. Yep. It's like Vertigo never existed. We got Gray Band Media popped in here. Is America comic books dead, or can they be isolated industry hoping to keep manga from getting Japanese sales numbers in the U.S.? I'm not the guy to answer that, and I appreciate you giving me the question, but that's one of the things I'm sort of pondering. So one of the things I mentioned, are the big 2 gone or what's going on? But I will say this before I get out of here. I'm one of those guys that I go out and I pay attention to what I see. not what I've been told, not what I'm reading online, not what I'm seeing in videos and stuff like that. I actually go. And you should go to a Books a Million in your area and see if it's the same thing, because there's 3 I can go to. One's in Northern Virginia, one's in Tennessee, and one's right up the road. And I've watched since the pandemic, I've watched the shelves of the graphic novels and the comics shrink to one little section, and I've seen rows and rows and rows and shelves and shelves and shelves of manga, and it's selling. And I've actually asked the managers of each place or the people working there at the time. And luckily, I've ended up talking to 2 of the managers, and they're like, when the pandemic started, this stuff took off. And the graphic novels are shrinking because nobody's buying them. The long boxes I was seeing around when the pandemic started and free comic book day in places and stuff were long boxes and short boxes of DC and Marvel comics from 2015 to probably like 2018 at the time. And it was more Marvel and stuff that they were stuck with, begging people to buy, putting quarter on it instead, quarter boxes. DC Convergence was, whenever that came out, that's when I saw all those boxes, because the boxes were full of DC Convergence books, if you remember that one. But anyway, I'm getting loopy. I think I've talked like an adult. I don't think I got too emotional or anything. I don't think I said anything to really piss anybody off, but I hope I've said enough to make people think, because I've been thinking, and I think it's a good thing to think. I think it's a good thing to think about things. I think it's a good thing to think about things you never thought of before. And I think it's a good thing to think about other people's perspectives, whether you agree with them or not. It's good to kind of see where they're coming from. But I'm really hoping for better comics in the future. I'm really hoping for a greater number of better comics in the future. And I'm also hoping that people stop trying to do this marketing and showing off and getting clout by just being ugly about a lot of things that used to be when you met people, like I said towards the beginning of the show, that for the people that's popping in, where you would meet people who were into comic books, and it was a treat. It was Christmas. You got to do a few minutes with people who have read other books with you and stuff and talk about it. And because, to be real, this YouTube thing has been going on for so long for so many of us, and it's been and there are people who collect comic books that don't remember we didn't have this, to where it'd be nice to just have that nice little fuzzy feeling of like, oh wow, you collect comic books too. That's cool. So anyway, you guys have a good night. Thanks for popping in and keeping me company, and let's try to be excellent to each other.